Hello, fellow sportsmen and citizens of Oklahoma. My name is Carlos Gomez, and I am producing this video in response to a current law proposal called Senate Bill 1142. This bill seeks to impose special restrictions on Oklahoma game wardens and would severely restrict how they perform their duties to effectively protect our wildlife. As the magazine editor for the Oklahoma State Game Warden Association and an Oklahoma game warden for over 36 years, I have some views I'd like to share with you for the next couple of minutes to correct some information that's been getting spread around. So let's get to it. It's been suggested that landowners are forced to forfeit their Second and Fourth Amendment rights when firing a gun, but that's simply just not true. I believe those claims are just one of those smoke screens to help get another poorly written piece of legislation passed to benefit a select group of people. There are no bigger defenders of the Second Amendment than Oklahoma's game wardens. We're all hunters and shooters and gun owners, and I myself am a proud life member of the NRA. Everyone in Oklahoma should fully understand that our wildlife department could not exist if it were not for guns and gun owners, and especially hunters. Firearms freedom is a cornerstone of our agency's mission and a major source of its funding. Without them, hunting would have passed away as a lost art long ago. Wardens defend and avidly promote the Second Amendment, teaching hunter education and shotgun training courses to expose citizens to the outdoors and their privilege to hunt. And regarding threats to landowners' Fourth Amendment rights, those claims and court challenges have been addressed many times by the Supreme Court. Our highest court requires game wardens prove the same investigative elements needed to justify a lawful search or entry onto private property, just like any other police. Those required elements must rise to the legal standard, often referred to as reasonable suspicion or probable cause. This new law would not change those requirements, nor a person's rights to privacy in an open field. In fact, according to rulings from our highest court, claims for the Fourth Amendment privacy in an open field are very similar to declaring an aircraft should not be permitted to fly overhead because they could see into the private lands. Now, some of the details on just how this proposed law would seriously hobble the protection of your wildlife. I heard it said on a video that game wardens could still do their job checking hunters when they actually witnessed someone hunting. Well, the reality is much of the hunting activity, and especially illegal hunting, will usually occur out of the public view. Poachers rarely conduct their crimes inside of the roadways, and if they're parked in view, they'll quickly disappear behind topography or vegetation. Hunting activities would become practically impossible to discover because poachers don't present their game at the roadway, as some naively suggest. And if the warden can't enter the woods, both landowners and wildlife will suffer. I heard a video say that this new law would not keep game wardens from entering private property to investigate poaching crimes, provided the officer has obtained permission from the landowner to enter and conduct his investigation. And that too is just not practical. It would be like requiring the fire department to get permission before entering property to fight someone's fire. This bill in its current form is much like suggesting the fire department must first see flames before they can lawfully enter property to investigate the smoke. Oklahoma is made up of an amazing checkerboard of land parcels, making up 95% of our land in Oklahoma. When a game violation occurs and we're attempting to intervene, researching court records for land information is not a practical option during what can often be a tense and critical moment. And locating many landowners would be especially difficult given the fact that oftentimes they live in town or even out of state. Game wardens work in a unique sort of police work that often places them in very remote settings. That makes the job interesting, but it can also make it very dangerous. And it was heard in this video that this new law would not prohibit a game warden from rendering aid to someone in distress. Well, if a game warden has to be invited onto the property, how does he render aid during an emergency? Does he break the law or put the emergency on hold until a landowner can be located? Common sense dictates the only people who really have a conflict with game wardens doing their job on private land is almost always someone who has issues with the game laws. And therein lies the objections that game wardens have to this proposal. When poaching is discovered, it's often at odd hours or even at night, and wardens need to be thinking about their safety and gathering evaporating elements of a crime. Poachers prefer the cover of darkness, and showdowns can become dangerous very quickly. When wardens are faced with a group of armed men committing criminal acts, the last thing an officer needs thrown into the tense situation is the criminals challenging whether the warden is violating the law when he contacts them. Equally as bad, this law would empower criminals to commit even more trespass and poaching upon learning wardens could no longer enter the private properties they like to slip in on. And removing the fear of capture on private property would also increase the frequency of people hunting without required licenses or wearing their blaze orange during the deer seasons. After all, who's going to check them if they're hunting out of view on private land where wardens cannot go? And this would obviously provide additional strain on the wildlife agency's already tightened budgets. Intimidating landowners would become far more commonplace because they would be the one having to do most of the violator confrontations. Poaching abuses would become even worse for smaller landowners because they don't have the luxury of ranch managers patrolling their properties. And for those owning parcels of land near metropolitan areas, it would become even worse because there are far more people to encounter. Here around my metro area in Tulsa, hunters and trespassers are roaming about on every wooded area they can find, which are usually a small lot of private land. Larger landowners are suggesting they'll take care of their own business and they don't need the game warden, saying we'll call him if we need him. But who's watching out for your neighbor's land, and who lives in town and who lives out of state? Then there's the court implications of this law. More than ever, poaching cases would be challenged and possibly lost due to the new argument clouding the issue. And the argument is, did the warden have permission to be there when the arrest was made? Then it was said on this video, game wardens are simply guessing on the location of gunshots, suggesting that hearing a blast is not helpful in an investigation, therefore justifying this proposal and prompting the man to ask on the video, why oppose the bill? Well, game wardens are very capable at determining distance and direction and can estimate locations fairly accurately when a shot is heard. So, though it's rarely used as the only clue, a game warden can and will use it to help in determining if wildlife is being pursued or taken. It's a little elementary to explain this, but frequency and location of the shots and the time of the day of the shots are all taken into account when shots are heard. But this proposal attempts to muddy that issue too. When on scene, game wardens watch and listen for all sorts of clues, including game running away or birds flushing, voices are heard, motor noises. Other visual signs like tire tracks and footprints are also clues that may contribute to gathering reasonable suspicion or probable cause. Gunshots are but one piece of that puzzle. It was suggested that the Wildlife Department is trying to be the king over the wildlife and not the larger landowners. Well, who is that that's trying to obtain autonomy from our laws governing the use and take of everyone's wildlife? The Wildlife Department has long been charged with the responsibility of protecting and maintaining and regulating our state's natural resources for everyone to enjoy. And I'd like to say, I think they've been doing a pretty good job of it. If it were not for this successful management system that includes enforcement oversight, there would be far less wildlife for everyone to fuss and worry about. We believe it's a few large landowners wanting a free hand to do as they please that's really at play here. And it comes at a time when wildlife numbers are high and state budgets are very low. Some elites now want to opt out of our team system, while some lawmakers are struggling to focus on causes of far more importance. Everyone is entitled to claim ownership and enjoy the fruits of our land, and these conservation programs, because everyone pays for it and we all play by the same rules. Wildlife and its managing agency only exist today because all sportsmen pay the fees and read the same wildlife rules. Those fees, along with the wildlife and federal Pittman-Robertson tax on guns and ammo, have financed everything, with wildlife fines making up less than 5% of the Wildlife Agency's budget. The Wildlife Agency receives no funding from the state legislature and only license and that guns and ammo tax. So again, thank goodness for guns and ammo. Our wildlife resources are precious and renewable, but they are a limited resource. Everyone who consumes or attempts to consume some must pay to play and follow the rules. But there's always some of those folks out there that just seem to resent being told that they must comply. If our working conservation system is to continue succeeding, It will take everyone following the rules, not just the ones with the smaller financial resources and fewer political influences. You know, Oklahoma game wardens have been enforcing laws that restored and continues to protect our wildlife to the great populations of wildlife we all enjoy. And they've been doing it for over 100 years now. Isn't it time you ask yourself, why is it now that an elite group partnered with a few politicians are complaining that game wardens are causing them a problem? We hope you'll go to the website oklegislature.gov. There you'll see a link for Find My Legislator and make your feelings known about this bill that will have devastating long-term consequences to our wildlife. Or else, as we've all often heard, especially in politics, those with the gold will make the rules.